welcome to Women in AI Summit 2020, and thank you for tuning in to India's session on Unveiling Inclusive AI, a multifaceted concept. I am Namrata Mukhija, Women in AI Delhi lead, and a software engineer at Microsoft. Let me introduce to you our first speaker, Kalika Bali. Kalika Bali is a principal researcher at Microsoft Research India, working broadly in the area of speech and language technology, especially in the use of linguistic models for building technology that offers more natural human-computer as well as computer-mediated interactions, and technology for low-resource languages. She is a linguist by training and technologist by profession, and believes that local language technology, especially with speech interfaces, can help millions of people gain entry into a world that is still now almost inaccessible to them. Welcome, Kalika. You can come on the stage.
Hi, thank you, Namrata.
Thanks, Kalika.
So I'm going to talk about inclusive AI, and there is a lot of buzz around AI and ethics and how to make AI more inclusive. But what do we really mean when we say inclusive AI? In a very, very short definition, one could say that AI systems can be built and used to support diversity and inclusiveness in society. And that's what inclusive AI means. The systems themselves, of course, do not have some particular human-like feature for being inclusive, but they actually are built in such way, designed in such way that the diversity and inclusiveness in society is supported by them, right? So, and why should this even matter? Why are we talking about this? Why am I here, telling you about all this at all? And the reason why we have to talk about this now, as we are riding this AI wave, is that we've seen many times in the past that technologies, especially path-breaking technologies, can sometimes, if we do not be thoughtful about them, actually create a more divided society. They can reinforce the inequalities that are already existing in society and in the way human world works. So it might be the case that technologies can actually increase the difference between, say, gender in society, can exacerbate the racial differences in society, etc. So this is why we really have to kind of think about why and how can we be more inclusive when we are building AI systems, right? Now, it's all very well to talk about inclusion, but what really is inclusion? People are not even agreed that, there are lots of ways of thinking about inclusion. People come to it from very different point of views. So what exactly is inclusion? A lot of the work that we talk about is about, how data should be non-biased, the algorithms that we work on should be, unbiased. Another way of looking at inclusion is that we should have equal access. Everybody should have equal access to AI technology. The third way of looking at inclusion is that there are some very vulnerable social groups in the world, and the AI technology should have a positive impact on those and not like kind of have a negative impact on those already marginalized social groups. And another way of this looking at this is through inclusive policies that would make deployment of such systems, address all these three things that I've talked about earlier, right? So when we talk about inclusion, we actually talk about all these things here. Three spheres as technologists that we are most familiar with are algorithms, data, and users. And at the intersection of all these three spheres, we have to think about inclusive AI. So when we talk about algorithms, not only, there is enough evidence and enough study done that diverse team, a more inclusive team working on algorithms actually can impact the end product. So this might seem like a weird thing, like what do you mean? But it is true that if you have the team of engineers or working algorithms are more diverse, that actually impacts the end product. But the one thing that most of us do not really think about are the users, right? The people who are going to use this technology, are they being included? Are they being a part of this whole conversation we are having about AI, or are we just thrusting this on them? Have we thought about what really is their need? What do they want? Have we done enough to make technology for the users, or are we like working in some abstract kind of a world of our own? And I would like to talk about users today from the user's perspective, because a lot of work is already being done and lots of people talk about algorithms and data all the time. And I would talk about social inclusion, which deals with users, and one aspect of social inclusion which is to do with language. So very quickly, 6 out of the 20 most spoken languages in the world are Indian. And we have over 7,000 living languages in the world, out of which only 100 plus 100-ish are supported by technology. You have GPT-3 in English, right? You have all these massively multilingual models which work for many of the world's languages. But just dig a bit deeper into those and see how many of those actually work for 6 of the 20 most spoken languages in the world, right? And we actually worked on this. We did some work around this, and we looked at two very different languages like Dutch and Somali, spoken by roughly like similar kind of numbers in the world. And we saw that these are very badly represented, not only in the technology. So if you have a machine translation system that goes from English to Dutch and English to Somali, we find that the Somali system works really badly. And even the conferences that support this technology, the venues that support these technologies, and we talk about this, also have very little representation of these languages. So some of the questions that we thought about are like, how many of the resources are available across the world's language, and do they really correlate with the number of speakers? What are the features in NLP systems which are language specific, and how many features are these systems actually exposed to? And of course, to do with how inclusive we as a community have been to these languages, right? So for that, we kind of worked on some language taxonomy. We looked at all the labeled, unlabeled data that was available, and kind of did a correlation between the systems and the data available. And we found that if we look at all the world's languages, we can classify them into 5 tasks. And the winners are like languages like English and French, which have lots and lots of data. People work on them, people support them in their technology. And then there is this class 0 of the left behinds, which have absolutely no data at all and no technology that works for them, right? And then in between, we have a whole bunch of other languages which are supported or not really supported, at various levels. The other interesting thing to see here is that nearly 1.2 billion people fall in that class 0 of left behinds, so which is 88.38% of the world's languages, right? So that's like a significant population of the world which is not supported by any technology in their own language, right? And the way we interact mostly with technology is through some language interface, either text or speech. And these languages and speakers of these languages are completely left behind. So we kind of started working on something called Eldora, which is enabling languages which have very low resources, and see how we can look at things a little differently and support these language communities with technology, right? And to do that, we kind of look at these 3 pillars. One is data, one is techniques, and one is applications. From all these 3 verticals, we approach the entire technology pipeline. So one of the things that obviously that we worry about is data. We don't have enough data for most of these languages, right? And one way of tackling this is to be able to get data in a different way. Try to think of it in an out of the box scenario, and how have enough, not enough, there's not enough digital presence of that language on the internet. So one thing that we worked on is something called Karya, which is like a platform for crowdsourcing in a rural environment or for a marginalized population. So we took Karya to, some very remote places in Maharashtra. So what you see here is a village which is actually right in the middle of a forest reserve, has no electricity, no television, not even a mobile signal, right? So if you have to actually talk on the phone, you have to climb a nearby hill and stand on the top and kind of wave your phone around, right? So we took Karya to the people in this village, and we were able to collect a lot of data in Marathi. And you would think Marathi is a mainstream Indian language, you'd have lots of data for it, but you don't. Just check the Wikipedia stats. After Hindi, there's a big fall in all the Indian languages. And this is representative of a lot of languages in various parts of the world, not just in India. And we were able to collect through Karya a lot of data, about 110 hours of Marathi speech data, right? So this is about collecting data, which is one aspect of it. But can we truly impact a low resource language community by doing this? We talked about how we can be more inclusive in getting these communities and these languages and the speakers of these languages part of the technology revolution that we're seeing in some sense right now. So what we did, collaborated not-for-profit organization called CG in central India mainly with a tribal population which speaks Gondi. So the Gonds are, it's a very unique language. It is actually a Dravidian language, which is like a South Indian language, but it is spoken mainly in more central, south, east of India. And it is nearly 3 million people. Most of them live in pretty remote areas, and there's absolutely zero technology support for Gondi. But the community itself is very motivated, and they really want to do something about it. So what I just wanted to say was that, we did some work around the Gondi community, and we were able to provide certain technology applications and framework in which the community was involved. The community was part of the whole process, and they were one of the very important stakeholders in building this technology. So I would like to wrap up here by just flashing this.
We will have Kalika join us in the next session that we have for India, the art of crafting inclusive AI products. So I would request you folks to join that session where you will see Kalika again for the Q&A, and we will ask your questions there with her. Thank you everyone for joining in. And it was a really insightful talk by Kalika, and I hope that you also share the same sentiment as I do, that she had some great insights on how we can craft inclusive AI products and the work that she is doing. So please do visit the Women in AI booth and register to become a member, and do join the next session to have a Q&A with her. Thank you.